all about your domain name. In this lesson, we're going to go through some big picture concepts, then get into some of the nitty-gritty, and then quickly get you moving on to your homework. So what is a domain name? Simply put, a domain name is just www something, usually .com, .net, .io. It is the word that you have registered so that you can associate it with your company. So it's just the part in between, in most cases, www and .com. That's all your domain name is. It is not the same thing as your website. Let me say that again. Your domain name, from a technical perspective, is not the same thing as your website. It is also not the same thing as your website hosting. And in fact, here's a scenario that's actually a pretty common scenario. You could register a domain name with a company like GoDaddy. You could have a marketing agency build a website and have it hosted at a company like WP Engine. And these three things are three separate companies with three separate logins. And in fact, this is the mix that best represents most of our clients. Most of our clients, usually before we started talking to them, registered a domain name with GoDaddy. We manage their website. There's a separate login for that. And all of our clients' websites are hosted on WP Engine. And again, these three things are separate. So what does it mean to register a domain name? It means that you have claimed and registered whatever the domain name is. In this example, it's yourcompany.com. Think of it more like renting it. Because you have to register it with one of a specific number of domain name registrars. GoDaddy is an example of one such place where you can register a domain name. And all domain name registrations will have an expiration date. And that actually leads me into really the point of this whole exercise, is to make sure that you understand where it's registered, how it's registered, and when the expiration date is coming up so you don't get caught by surprise. So let's examine the question, do you own your company's domain name? And what does that even mean? Well, here's what it means. It means the domain name associated with your company is registered in your name. Depending on who you are watching this, I'm making the assumption that you are either the business owner or a partner in the business. You may be a general manager, but someone who is going to be permanently affiliated with the company needs to be the one who has the registration associated with their name. It also means that you can log in to the place where you registered it. So, for example, let's say you registered your domain name through GoDaddy. It means that you can lay your hands on the username and password so you can log into your GoDaddy account. It also means that you know when it's going to expire. So earlier in this lesson, we told you that all domain name registrations have an expiration date. You might have registered it 10 years ago and you've forgotten about it, because who can remember something like that from 10 years ago? Well, that expiration date can sneak up on you, and then suddenly you've got a world of headache to manage on the day that it expires. You also need to make sure that a credit card on file with the registrar is up to date. And the word registrar is the type of company that GoDaddy is when they are performing the act of helping you register your domain name. It doesn't have to be GoDaddy. There's lots of registrars that you could have worked with. You might have registered it through something like Network Solutions or Register.com. But these are the bullets we want you to keep in mind. You know whose name it's registered in. You can log into the place where you set it up to begin with. You know when it expires, and the credit card on file is up to date. So let's look at the risk of what happens if you don't own it, or you can't affirmatively answer some of the bullets on the last slide. Well, it means that if you've got a website that's up and running at that domain name, you are investing in something that you don't fully control. Now, remember, your domain name and your website are not the same thing. So you could be pouring money and time and energy towards SEO, towards PPC campaigns. You might have spent, thousands of dollars on a website design. All kinds of things end up living at your domain name. And if you are not the owner, or if you've forgotten when the expiration date is, or you can't log into it, or you let the credit card expire, then the domain itself can expire. Or if you are not the owner and someone else owns it, they can sell it. And then once they sell it, they can redirect it. So what does that mean? That means you own the business, but you don't own the domain name. You've kind of forgotten about it. Whoever owns it sells it to another company, maybe even your competitor in your local market, and suddenly your competitor's website is at your domain name. That's sort of a horror story, but believe me, we have seen some really interesting things happen with domain names. What we're trying to say is if you let this sneak up on you, it can seriously disrupt your business. So like I said a few seconds ago, you could wake up one morning and your website's down and you don't know why. You might just see like a big message that says, this domain name is for sale. We have actually seen that happen with clients where we weren't helping them manage their domain. They let it expire. Suddenly the website's down and they can't remember when they registered it, who they registered it with, all that stuff. The other thing is, if you have all of your company email addresses associated with your domain name manages the routing of email traffic. So on the day that your domain name expires, not only will your website go down, but your email will stop working. And if you've invested in any other systems where maybe you have a client portal or something like that you've set up at what's called a subdomain. Maybe you've got something like estimates.yourcompany.com or clientportal.yourcompany.com or financing or payments or something like that. All of those things are going to stop working the day your domain name expires or the credit card on file doesn't, automatically renew the payment. So if you don't own your domain name, who could own it? Well, let's look at that. Your current website vendor could be the one that owns your domain name. If you are the owner of the company and you worked with a local web design company or a digital agency and you have absolutely no memory of how your domain name came to be, it's possible that the company that built your website registered it and then built your website, and they may have registered it in their name and not yours. Another example of this kind of thing that we've seen is a pay-per-lead company that tells you, we'll give you a website for free, and all you have to do is pay for the leads. And you're thinking, great, I'm busy. I don't want to mess with this. Well, years down the road, you want to invest more in this website and maybe do something beyond pay-per-lead. And then you find out that the domain name and the website that's really become associated with your company, you don't own it or the domain name. Another possible candidate for who could own your domain name if you know it's not you could be your former business partner. This is another thing that we've 100% seen happen. It could be a family member or a friend who helped you register it. And it could be the person you bought the business from. I promise you that every single bullet on this slide represents something we've actually seen happen with clients. So how can you tell who owns your domain name if you're pretty sure it's not you and you don't remember? Well, there's a website called whois.com. You can go to Whois, type in your domain name, and then click a button and see what comes back. It will often give you information about who registered that domain and their contact information. Sometimes that contact information has been made private, and you not only can't see who registered it, but you can't see anything else about it. So let's say you don't know who owned your domain name, you can't remember when it happened, You've tried to do something like a who is lookup, and all that's failed. So what's next? At this point, now you're on a mystery hunt. I would search through your email. I would look through old business files. I would ask your spouse. I would ask your business manager, ask your office manager, ask people who worked for you for a long time. Hey, does anybody remember when we first set up the website, how we got the domain name? All of this is pretty important for all the reasons that we've covered. You need to lock this down. So let's go over your homework assignment. We have a handy dandy checklist with a little bit more information and some tips on how to tackle this homework. What you need to do is you need to download it, fill it out, and save it somewhere safe. Fingers crossed, this is an exercise that should take you maybe 10 minutes. If you know where you registered the domain, you can figure out what the username and password is. You can fill out what the expiration date is. So we're hoping for you. We're thinking good thoughts that this is just going to be something easy you can knock out and then feel really good that you've got this one thing taken care of, and you won't walk into the building one day on a Tuesday and realize that your website's down, your email's down, and your client portal's down, and you can't figure out what to do about it.